Hello, everybody. My name is Haley Brown, and I'm going to be reviewing the methods for obtaining a population density estimate on koalas in Australia. So the biggest problem that they're facing right now, they have a history of habitat disturbance, and they're also susceptible to infections like chlamydia, while also having a very specific food tree preference. And this can limit them to the typically small densities that they are found in, which in turn makes it hard to detect the individuals and to study long-term trends on these populations. And the population estimates for koalas in general have been inconsistent and relatively limited. So the first method I'm going to review is the regularized grid-based spot assessment technique. And this is going to be survey sites that are tree-based sampling methods and are located at grid line intersections at defined intervals. And the presence or absence of fecal pellets from these koalas are assessed using the spot assessment technique method at these sites. And this provides a measure of koala activity as well as the population density estimate. And some of the pros is that it's simple, unbiased, and robust sampling tool, and recognized as an appropriate technique for surveying koalas across a range of habitat types. Some of the cons is that it must be adjusted to ensure an appropriate food species, a low fire damage history, and proximity to water. Relative detectability of scats across sites or vegetation strata is also an important consideration with this technique. The second method I'm going to review is the remotely piloted aircraft system. And this is just flying an aircraft system over the koala's ideal habitat with infrared detectors. And then we can use object detection algorithms to detect each of the individual koala's heat signatures. And further mapping and calculations could tell us an estimate on this population. So some of the pros is that assessing the koala populations over large areas and habitats where density is low. It could be more accurate, it covers more area quicker, and you can get to areas that may not be accessible on foot. Some of the cons is that you need to perform this ideally during colder months or colder mornings when heat can be clearly seen and clearly distinct. And then false detections from livestock and people are an issue while using this method, and this is also a tedious and time-consuming method. The third method I'm going to review is the line transect sampling method. This is going to be where you measure the koala during a systemic transect-based search of the target habitat. When a koala is sighted on or at a distance from the search transect, the perpendicular distance from the route to the koala is measured and then recorded. Some of the pros is that sedentary nature and roosting behavior of koalas during the daytime makes them a suitable species. That just means they don't move a lot during the day, so they're easier to detect. Changes in sight ability can be accommodated, and it can be suitable for large areas. Some of the cons is that you need extra data like histograms and doing a best fit line. Could be biased if not performed correctly, and evasive movement of animals in response to the observer is often a problem. Finally, I'm going to review the mark recite method, and this is going to be where koalas are like in a certain search area are caught and tagged with colored ear tags, or you can use bands, paint, dye, so on, so forth before being back released into the wild. After some period, the habitat is surveyed, and then koalas are cited with the number of tagged and untagged animals as then recorded. Then the proportion of recited tagged animals can be compared to the total number of animals tagged and assumed to be the same as the proportion of all koalas cited to the unknown total koala population. Some of the pros to this is that there's efficiencies of cost and time for research teams. It's relatively less invasive than mark recapture and incorporates additional data via sightings of unmarked individuals into estimation framework. On the other hand, there's some cons that requires the number of marked individuals in the population during sampling be known exactly, or can always be reliably estimated. And depending on the time between tagging, you need to account for the deaths and the births and immigration, and so on. My recommendation for this population density estimate is going to be a combination of regularized grid-based spot assessment technique and the remotely piloted aircraft system. The regularized grid-based spot assessment technique captures 85 to 90% of present-day koala records. Therefore, by taking this data collected, we can narrow down the locations of the koalas, since we're most likely going to see the koala scat of their ideal by their ideal trees or vegetation, which is also known as their home range. I have an example of their home range in the picture right over here. And these little red and orange spots are going to be the scat assessments. And this is going to be a defined boundary of their range, which makes it easier in order to fly the remotely piloted aircraft, because then we can make it easier to detect koalas through this dense vegetation and trees that they're typically found in. And together, these methods can minimize the invasiveness and while maximizing the detectability of these koalas. Thank you for listening. I have all my references from this presentation in the corner right over here, and I look forward to reading your questions.